Hey guys, Tom here again from synthhacker.com. Welcome back to another tutorial for Serum. Got a really cool bass sound for you today, which was taking inspiration from the alias Malaa, which I believe is a few people. I think it's like DJ Snake, Oliver Heldens, and someone else I can't quite remember. But yeah, it's just taking inspiration from their really kind of aggressive style of like house basses that they kind of create, which is kind of, I guess, a little bit future house, but then also taking inspiration from more like minimal house and like deep house and stuff like that. So I'll stop yabbing and I'll show you the sound, and then we'll get started making it from scratch. Really cool heavy bass sound, and there's actually some pretty interesting things going on in the effects section which I'm going to talk about, especially the use of the distortion and filter, which is really cool. So yeah, I'll just go ahead and initialize the patch, and we can begin making it. As always guys, these videos are supported by my website over at synthhacker.com. If you haven't done so already, definitely go over there and check out my presets for Serum and other synths as well. I really do appreciate it. It helps support the channel and means I can keep creating content for you guys. So thanks in advance if you do decide to check that out. But without further ado, let's begin making this really cool bass sound. The first thing we're going to do is just start in the sub oscillator and bring this down to octaves. Usually what I do on these types of bass sounds is set this to direct out so that you get like, you know, it's usually just to avoid the sub, whatever waveform you're using, you know, being affected at all by all the other processes that you're using within the synth. But in this case, I found that it sounded really nice when we actually routed the sub bass through the distortion and filters and stuff that we'll be implementing later on. So I'd advise actually just keeping this direct out button off just to kind of route it through the distortion. It really helps kind of fatten up the sound. Next, what we're going to do is set up our oscillator A, which again we're just going to use a sine wave. You can use either like the analog BD sine or just the digital sine. It's completely up to you. And we're just going to keep this on kind of one voice of unison, and keep the level about where it is, maybe increase it just a little bit. And then oscillator B, one thing I forgot to do was just pitch this down one octave as well, because we have our sub at -2, oscillator A at -1, and then we're going to leave oscillator B as a saw wave actually, just at the default octave here, and we're going to give this a few voices of unison as well. And the reason that I did this was really just to add some subtle high end to the sound once you open up the cutoff a little bit, and if you just bring the detune down a little bit. And what this is going to do is, by default in Serum, the voices of unison are actually spread across the stereo field. So what I found that this did was really kind of widen the bass sound up a little bit, like across the stereo field. And that's actually a really good technique on bass sounds like this, especially in the genre that it's in, because a lot of the times, especially in Malaa's track Notorious, there's not really much going on in the drop. You know, you got your kick, your clap, and the bass sound, and then after like a few bars, some hats come in and stuff like that. So really, you've got a lot of room to play around in, which is pretty cool. So yeah, I'd advise you know, adding some unison to this oscillator B. What I do sometimes though with this is go into the global tab and just bring the width down a little bit, because it can be like a little bit too extreme sometimes. I'd say anywhere around 50 is fine, but obviously you can just play with this to your own taste really. So that's the basic kind of harmonic structure set up with our oscillators. What we're going to do now is dive into envelope 1 and just set this up to give us kind of just a basic pluck kind of envelope really. Maybe bring the decay back a little bit, somewhere around 700, and then just add a little bit of release. But be careful you don't go too overboard with this, because it can start to get a little bit muddy. And then finally, again, just to avoid everything becoming a bit muddy, make sure that you have your bass sound set to mono. And this just means that once one note plays, the note that played before is going to stop, so they're not kind of clashing with each other. So I would demonstrate the sound now, but really you're not going to hear much. You're just going to hear the basic waveforms. You'll not really hear the effect of the sound until we get into the effects. But what I actually did do, as you'll have seen when I went into the effects earlier, I'm using a filter in the effects section. But what I also did was add just a filter before the effects section, which I actually wasn't going to do originally, but I actually found that it sounded quite nice when oscillator A and B were routed through the filter. I think I set this to, was it 24 dB? Yeah. And what's really cool about the MG low pass 24 dB ladder filter is this drive setting. And you'll find that this just adds a nice bit of saturation, and it's almost like you can think of it as like another distortion stage before it actually goes into the effects, which is pretty cool. And I found that really just kind of fattens stuff up. So I'll demonstrate what we've got just right now, but it won't really sound much like the bass. So as you can hear there, it doesn't really sound anything like the bass sound that we're trying to get, because really where the kind of like main, I guess, magic is happening is in the effects section. So let's dive into the effects now. We're using 3 different effects. The first effect that we're going to use is the distortion, which is going to be the first in the chain. And to really kind of drive the sound and give it the kind of really aggressive character that the Malaa bass in Notorious had, I found the one that sounded best was this sinefold distortion. And then I kept the kind of EQ section as it is, brought the drive down to just below a quarter, I think sounded best, and then brought down the mix a little bit, and you'll hear the effect that this has now. You can really hear, especially in that low end, you can hear the harmonics are already starting to sound like the bass sound we're after. But now we've kind of like really pushed the distortion, or push the sound through the distortion. What we're going to do now is actually use a filter in the effects chain to shape it. And this is quite different to what we usually do when creating these house basses, especially in Serum. Usually what we do is use like a pluck-like envelope on the filter before the effects. But what we've actually done here to create a more aggressive sound is actually put the distortion before our filter, and then we can shape the result of that, which is really cool. So we're going to set this to 24 dB, bring the cutoff down to about here. We're going to keep the resonance down, give it a little bit of drive, again just to add to the kind of aggressive nature of the sound, and then drag and drop our amplitude envelope on the cutoff here. And now you'll really be able to hear the more what we're kind of going after. Now, I really like the bass sound, pretty much like that, you know, with not too much high end. I think it sounds really, really cool when there's not too much harsh high end. It sounds makes it sound less kind of like electro house and more kind of deep house, which is really cool. And by deep house, I don't mean, you know, the more kind of techno side of things. I mean more towards like future house. And I really like it like that. But if you kind of are after an even more aggressive sound, you can kind of open the envelope up a little bit like this. It really just comes down to personal preference, I guess. I think one of the last things that I did was just add an EQ to give a subtle boost in like the high mids. Let's see. I think I set the frequency to around where it is, brought the Q down a little bit, and just gave it a little boost of like 4 dB. And this really just helped bring out some of the characteristics that I really liked in the sound. You can hear it adds like a slight crunchiness to the sound. And yeah, that's pretty much it. Really, really cool concept and idea of putting the distortion before the filter. I'm going to be playing around with this kind of technique a little bit more. I really, really like this kind of style of house that Malaa have been doing. Like I said, I think it's like DJ Snake, is it Charmy, whatever his name is, and Oliver Heldens, or someone like that. It's like a group of like pretty big producers. But I really like this kind of like minimal, aggressive style of house. It's really cool. So yeah, thanks a lot for watching, guys. Hopefully you got a lot out of this video. Again, if you haven't done so already, definitely go ahead and check out my website over at synthhacker.com. Subscribe if you haven't done so already to stay up to date with future videos. And if you got use out of the video, please leave a like. Any questions or suggestions for other tutorials or anything like that, please leave a comment down below. And yeah, that's it, guys. So thanks a lot for watching, and I'll see you in the next video.